It is Monday morning, your alarm goes off, you drag yourself out of bed, pour a massive cup of coffee, and prepare for the ritual that dominates your entire existence. The 40-hour work week. If you're like most Americans, 40 hours is a joke. By the time you factor in the commute, the emails you answer from your couch, and the sheer mental exhaustion of hustle culture, your job easily consumes 60 hours of your week. We accept this as normal. We're told that grinding away for most of our waking hours is simply the price of admission to modern civilization. If you feel tired, burned out, or secretly hate the daily grind, society tells you that you just lack discipline. But what if you aren't lazy at all? What if your brain is perfectly healthy, but it's trapped in an environment it was never designed for? To understand why you're so exhausted, we have to look back at the original human operating system. We have to look at how much our ancient ancestors actually worked. And the answer is going to make you seriously question how you spend your life. For about 95% of human history, we were hunter-gatherers. We didn't have agriculture, we didn't have factories, and we certainly didn't have middle management. For a long time, modern historians assumed that early humans lived desperate, brutal lives, constantly starving and working themselves to the bone just to survive another day. But in the 1960s, anthropologists decided to actually study the few remaining hunter-gatherer tribes on Earth, like the Jew Huansi in the Kalahari Desert. They expected to find people working from dawn until dusk just to stay alive in a harsh environment. Instead, they discovered something that completely shattered the modern myth of progress. The average adult in these societies spent only 15 to 20 hours a week acquiring food. That's it. Even after adding everyday tasks like making tools, repairing shelters, gathering firewood, and cooking, the total amount of time spent on anything resembling work rarely exceeded 40 hours a week. In other words, their absolute maximum workload was roughly equal to the bare minimum expected from many people today. Now imagine this, you finish your entire week's work by Wednesday afternoon, and the rest of the week is completely yours. That wasn't a vacation, that was the default human experience for 300,000 years. So, if they weren't working, what on earth were they doing with all that free time? They did exactly what you desperately want to do. On a Sunday afternoon, they slept. A lot. They spent hours in deep, unstructured conversations. They told stories. They made art. They played with their children. And sometimes, they simply sat in silence, doing absolutely nothing. This is crucial to understand. Biologically, you are almost identical to those ancient humans. Your brain and nervous system were forged in an environment where intense, short bursts of physical effort, like a hunt or gathering trip, were immediately rewarded with days of profound rest and leisure. Your brain is hardwired to seek out rest and conserve energy because, in the wild, calories were scarce. So when you sit at your desk on a Tuesday afternoon and feel an overwhelming primal urge to just stare at the wall or scroll mindlessly through your phone, that isn't a character flaw. That is your 300,000-year-old biology begging for the downtime it expects, but is no longer getting. If the original setup was so good, how did we end up commuting on the freeway at 7 a.m.? Around 10,000 years ago, humanity made a trade. We invented agriculture, and in return, we traded our freedom and our varied diet for the security of a massive food surplus. We stopped wandering and started building permanent settlements. But farming came with a price. Crops demanded constant, back-breaking labor. Fields had to be plowed, watered, protected, and harvested almost every single day. Suddenly, humanity went from working around 15 hours a week to working from sunrise until sunset. Agriculture allowed us to build cities, write books, and eventually invent the internet. But it also invented the concept of surplus labor. For the first time in history, you could work harder than you needed to survive, just so someone else at the top of the hierarchy didn't have to work at all. Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution, and humans were shoved into factories for 14 hours a day. The 40-hour workweek we have today was actually a hard-fought victory won by labor unions in the 20th century. It feels normal to us, but on an evolutionary timeline, the 9-to-5 is a radical, bizarre experiment. Of course, we can't go back to living in caves. You still have to pay rent, buy groceries, and survive in the modern world. But understanding this history changes everything about the way you see yourself. The exhaustion you feel isn't because you're broken. The dread that creeps in on a Sunday night isn't proof that you're a failure or that you simply can't handle the real world, because the real world is a modern invention. You are an apex predator, a species that evolved to sprint, to hunt, to gather, and then spend hours relaxing beside a fire, surrounded by your tribe. Instead, modern society places you in a cubicle and asks you to stare at a glowing rectangle for 40 hours every week just to make a line on a graph go up. So the next time you feel guilty for wanting to take a nap or for closing your laptop and doing absolutely nothing, remember this: you aren't being lazy, you aren't weak, you aren't broken. You're simply responding exactly the way 300,000 years of human evolution designed you to. And here's something even more unbelievable. Thousands of years before modern hospitals existed, ancient humans were already performing surgeries that actually worked. How did they survive without anesthesia, sterile tools, or modern medicine? Click here to uncover the incredible story of the world's first surgery.